I first noticed the quiet on a Tuesday, when the schoolyard usually hums with the thin silver noise of morning songs. Ms. Elara stood at the front of her class, with a hand at her throat, as if checking for a lighthouse that had gone dark. Children watched her with wide round eyes. She lifted the baton, and nothing rose to meet it. No warm ribbon of sound, no easy rise of the first note. Only the soft clatter of pencils, a chair leg scraping like a stray thought. I had moved into the apartment across from hers a year earlier, and in that time I had learned the map of her days by the way her voice traveled. It drifted over the courtyard in little weather forecasts of joy. On that Tuesday the air hung heavy, and when class ended, she slipped into the hallway with the careful steps of someone carrying a fragile bowl. Loss is not always loud. Sometimes it arrives like frost through a window, painting the edges first. She smiled to the children, but the corners of her smile were tired. The doctor called it inflammation and rest. She nodded, but I could see how her mind was measuring the days like a swallow trying to cross a sudden winter. In the evenings, I saw her at the window, the place where her voice used to etch faint notes into the night. She pressed a mug between her palms, as if warmth could climb from the cup and find the place inside that had gone quiet. Around her were small things that remembered who she had been. Sheet music curled at the edges, a metronome waiting like a clock that refused to hand out hours. Silence can weigh more than iron. It sunk her shoulders, trimmed the colors of her clothes to quieter shades. At school she taught with gestures and soft claps, drawing rhythm in the air, but after each class she would linger, the way swimmers linger near the ladder when they are not sure of the depth. I am an old painter who once mislaid the sun for a while. Years ago my sight faded and returned in fragments, and I learned how much of life can be carried by the senses that remain. Watching her now, I felt that old ache, the echo of a room where a door used to be. I knew this first grief, and I knew it would ask for patience, which is another word for love, stretched across time. It was the third week when I found her sitting on the courtyard bench, shoulders wrapped in a grey scarf, though the afternoon was gentle. Her notebook rested on her lap, its pages still clean, as if the act of writing felt too much like admitting her silence was permanent. She looked up when I sat beside her, the question already in her eyes, though she did not ask it aloud. I told her I once lived inside a different kind of silence. Mine had been painted in shadow when my eyesight failed. Colors I once leaned on like old friends turned into vague shapes, the edges of the world slipping from my hands. At first I thought I had lost myself completely, the way a tree stripped of its leaves might forget it is still alive. But in time, I learned to listen to the world with new ears, to touch the grain of a table, to smell the breath of the earth after rain. Loss did not take me away. It changed me into someone who could see without sight. Her eyes softened, and for the first time since her voice had gone, she allowed herself to meet mine without lowering her gaze. I told her the truth, that the body may lose its chosen instruments, but the soul still holds 1,000 ways to sing. A brush in a trembling hand still carries light. A teacher without a voice still carries rhythm. For a moment she looked as if she might cry, but instead she wrote a single word in her notebook. "Oh," I said, "begin by teaching with silence. Children will not remember only the notes you sing, but the way your hands draw music into the air, the way your eyes encourage them to find sound within themselves. Show them that music does not live only in the throat. It also lives in the skin, the breath, the beating heart." The afternoon stretched like a slow river, the light leaning golden against the walls. She sat still, letting my words fold into her. I could see something shift, like a bird turning its head toward a new direction. It was not joy yet, but it was the quiet beginning of it. Before she left the bench, she tapped her notebook twice, as though sealing a promise she had not yet spoken. I recognized that gesture. It was the same way I had once touched the edge of a canvas, daring myself to paint again though the world looked blurred. The next morning I heard a soft clapping through the courtyard. It was uneven at first, like footsteps learning a new path. Curious, I leaned toward the open window and saw her classroom alive again. She was standing at the front, not singing, but guiding. Her hands moved as though she was sculpting the air, shaping invisible clay into rhythm. The children followed her claps, their voices filling the gaps where hers could not go. It was imperfect, but there was joy in it, and joy does not ask for perfection. Over the weeks, her lessons became a kind of dance. She tapped rhythm on the floor with a stick, letting vibrations guide the students. She encouraged them to close their eyes and feel how sound vibrated in their chests, to notice how silence framed each note like a careful border. Music began to live differently in that room, less about melody and more about presence. The children leaned into it, perhaps sensing her courage, perhaps sensing that she was asking them to grow with her. She still struggled, of course. I saw the way her shoulders slumped when a student asked her to sing just once more. She tried, and what came out was a thin whisper, not the river it once had been. The child looked down, not wanting to hurt her, and she closed her eyes. For a moment, the silence pressed heavy again, but then she smiled, fragile but steady, and lifted the child's chin with her hand. She pointed to his chest, and with a gentle pat, reminded him the song was his to carry now. That night, she knocked on my door. In her hands was a piece of paper, a short note written in her round handwriting. It said, "I thought my voice was everything. Now I see it was only one of many doors. You showed me the others. Thank you." I told her she was finding something I had also found, that when life takes one gift, it leaves space for another to bloom. She nodded, and though her throat was still fragile, her eyes spoke more than any voice could. As weeks turned into months, the courtyard filled again with music, not her voice, but the laughter and songs of children who had learned to find sound within themselves. And in that, she found her own voice again, quiet, steady, carried not by air but by the love she planted in others. Loss had changed her, but not into less. It had made her more. Sometimes the greatest lessons come when life takes something away. Losing her voice could have been the end of her story, but instead it became the beginning of a deeper one. In silence, she discovered a truth. Many of us forget that our worth is not tied to what we can do, but to how we can touch others. Every one of us carries a voice beyond sound, a way of leaving light in the world that no loss can erase. If this story touched you, share it, leave your thoughts below, and subscribe for more tales of kindness.